Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Wellness Wednesday. Today is Wednesday, April 14th, 2021. My name is Ihsan Hines from MBKCares. I'm joined by Eric Marsh, board member from MBKCares and also the founder of the Fathering Circle. And we're also joined by Tyrice McCoy, family therapist. Tyrice, welcome. Eric, welcome. In America, welcome. Actually, beyond America, right?
Yes, good morning from South Africa.
Yes, we international now. Tyrice, it's so good to have you here. Thank you so much for joining us this time.
It's good to be here, family. It's good to see your faces.
Yeah, so I'll just give a quick overview of what we're going to be talking about tonight. Tonight, this is our second episode of our newest season of Wellness Wednesday. And what we decided to do this week is give all of you, our viewers, an overview of and a little bit of history behind what prompted us to start Wellness Wednesday, what is Wellness Wednesday, and what is MBK Cares? What does it do? And why are we here every week providing these conversations and discussions to you? And so to help facilitate that conversation is our good friend, Tyrice McCoy, who is joining us all the way from South Africa on a ministry. I don't want to call it a trip, but I guess it's a ministry trip, correct?
Yeah, I'd say it's like more of a ministry assignment, but
Ministry
yes.
assignment. Ministry assignment. Okay. All right. So we're just going to get into some very basic conversation, and Tyrice is going to serve in your place as audience members. But for those of you who are watching, feel free to put your questions or comments in the chat, and we're going to just, hopefully be vulnerable, be real, and provide some resources, some information for you and your healing, and hope that you join us on this journey. So thank you. All right, Ihsan, any way you want to particularly start it off, or you got any questions for Tyrice? Tyrice, you got any questions for us?
You know what? Good morning, everyone, from Thursday over here. And as we were getting on, we were all kind of coming into life and rest, or coming from rest. And the question about self-care in the light of all of what's happening in our lives rises up for me. And then what does Cares bring into the picture, into the landscape of caring for ourselves, our mind, our body, and our spirit? So I just want to ask that question of you all. Where do you stand with self-care, and where does MBK Care stand with self-care?
Eric, you want me to answer this one first?
I would love for you to answer this one first.
Okay, so they're one together. They're hand in hand. When I don't take care of myself, the organization, my relationships, everything, my family, all kinds of things in my environment suffer. Alana, who's one of our executive board members, I remember a couple of years ago, she was telling me these things like, you have to take care of yourself first because you can't give from like an empty reservoir. So personally, MBK Cares, the reason it was even developed was in the aftermath of my brother dying from suicide. And the aftermath of that included my own bouts with depression. And then some of the circumstances that had nothing to do with my brother impacted my depression even more and put me on a journey of acknowledging that I too am very depressed. I too wrestle with thoughts of dark places and not really want to be around. Not as much as I used to, but it put me in a place where I realized I have to acknowledge that those things are there. And therapy became very important to me. Being vulnerable, talking about broken places became very important to me. But then taking some steps outside the doors to go for walks, learning how to journal, learning how to be honest with God and prayer, sleeping more, eating more healthy foods. I still eat more too, but eating like more balanced things, but then just being careful with the content that I consume And self-care also started to include reaching out and accepting when people reach out to me. So Eric and I met, actually, Eric, we met 2 years ago from this week in light of the aftermath of another young man in our community dying from suicide. But being able to let somebody speak truth to me when I usually was somebody who I could listen to people, but I wouldn't allow anyone to really speak to me in a way where I would take all their advice. But having somebody like Eric come along and tell me about his journey, so that it would be like a testimony I could look at and say, you know what, this man also overcame, or he can identify with some of my own struggles, my current circumstances, and tell me, young man, you want to get through that, or brother, you want to get through that. So being open to other people's experience and their guidance. So that all played a part in my own self-care. I don't know if that was mumbled and jumbled, but it included relationships, dialogue, it included, or it includes, because it's not even done. I'm still in this process. And I don't walk as much as I used to walk. I don't ride my bike as much as I used to, but there's ups and downs, and there's now acknowledgement that those resources are at the ready for me to take advantage of.
Okay, wow.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Ihsan.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for that, Ihsan, and thank you for that acknowledgement. And as Ihsan said, we did meet 2 years ago this week. My work previously was, it's our anniversary, Ihsan.
Anniversary.
So the work that I was involved in, and at the time, was with an organization called the No Bullying Coalition. And that was also focused on bullying, violence, and suicide prevention. And as Ihsan already alluded to, that was something that we've been working on together now for 2 years, and individually prior to that. But what got me into it was also, one, having experienced severe bouts of depression, seasonal affective disorder, and at least once, possibly maybe twice in my life, suicidal thoughts. And then also watching young people. I have 2 young children, and at the time I was really concerned about the violence that was going on in their schools and things like that. So that's a little bit of the history in terms of wellness and how I'm balancing and working it. I started taking walks last year at the height of the pandemic, very beginning of the pandemic, for my own well-being. Walking in nature was something that was significantly important to me and helpful. I also started keeping a gratitude journal, and then also trying to be mindful about exercise and diet and things like that. But one of the things that's most helpful is just these conversations, and my conversations with my brothers like Ihsan, and with you, Tyrice, and folks who I know are listening with a loving ear and attentive, and just providing that safe space to open up. So, and that's what I hope that we can provide when we do these Wellness Wednesdays for other people.
You know what, just being open and saying, you know what, this is what my journey has been, or this is what my journey is. It opens up the door for more people to say, this is what I'm struggling with. This is what I'm going through, especially because of the many different people who you all are in contact with, your friends, those you serve, those your contacts, right? They're like, yeah, you know what? It's tough sometimes. It's tough being a leader out here.
Yeah, it is a
Sometimes you wanna
burden.
sit down.
It is a burden. It is a burden. And I don't think we talk about it. We live in a society where we worship the spotlight, right? Like, we have all of these reality shows. We have all of these different things where people are just clamoring to be in the spotlight, but they don't understand the weight and the burden of that. And I think, we have seen it time and time again. And here's another thing. So let me just back up and say, we are not trying to join the spotlight, right? We really want to shine a spotlight on the issues and the solutions to those issues. But I think because of the nature of society that we live in, people are chasing around things that are not substantive and not healthy. And I think this is this platform that Ihsan has created really provides some nourishment for people who are starving.
You know, Eric, like,
Yeah, you know,
I'm sorry, Tyrice.
no, you're good. You can go, Ihsan.
Like, I used to always hear when I was doing Christian rap, I always hear people talk about like, to God be the glory, right? And it would be a level of like, some of that was always true because it always is to God be the glory, but there would be a level of like false humility that I would encounter where people didn't acknowledge like you do have a responsibility, or you may be talented, or you may have a certain platform, right? And what I realized is that, first of all, really, this is to God be the glory because, Eric, nothing really changed in my personal journey or in my relationships until I really realized like I am jacked up, right? But not in ways to like be pitiful or to like put yourself down, because even in that is pride. Pride is not always saying I'm really big. Pride is just an exaggerated self-view, whether that be exaggerated like, oh, I'm so low or I'm so high, but it's a distorted self-view. What I've come to realize, man, is that we all are in places of like the spotlight is on us, right? But it's realizing that we are carrying a flashlight, because even with like our faith, we're talking to people about our faith, but it's so that we're guided unto who's the source, not that we're the source. Because all of us, whether you're a pastor, you're anybody, we're not the ones who everybody's putting the flashlight on. We're just the ones saying, hey, follow me. I have this flashlight. I know where the source is. It's over here. But I'm also in the same process of depending on faith and all that. And what reason I bring that up is because in the past, whether it was in ministry or even within this responsibility as a public figure doing mental health and suicide awareness initiatives, there's moments where my current circumstance doesn't line up with my schedule, right? So I may have the responsibility of going to an event. And Eric, I can speak to this about something that happened with you and I the summer that we met. My schedule says show up here, but my current circumstances may include some struggle. It may include personal inner struggle or an argument that may have happened, or responsibilities of fatherhood. It may include struggles with finances. All these things line up, but then it's like, hold up, but you have to show up to this stage today. So I'm going to use an example because that may be left field. Eric, I had to speak at a town hall at Xfinity Live in June of 2019. And you and I just started really connecting that April. And I had to go on and speak in front of a room about 175 white men, construction workers and carpenters, about mental health and suicide. But I was going through a really depressing breakup, and I was only 7 months out of a plan to take my life from October of 2018. And I found myself in a parking lot outside of Xfinity Live, like, I don't want to go in here. And I called you, and I didn't feel like going in. And you helped me to just compartmentalize what the struggle was and realize like I can get back to that. But right now I have to go handle this. But that is real. That was a real struggle. And to God be the glory, I was able to cry and get through some stuff and take some of your advice, but then lean on God in a way where he did some things that brought that to be a successful opportunity to be vulnerable, to go in there before these people were brokenness. And then that actually became the conduit to a successful opportunity to minister or to speak truth to their circumstances. But it took your help, but it also took realizing like, even when I have an answer or I have a testimony, it's difficult at times for that testimony to line up with my schedule. And just showing up, sometimes just showing up is significant. And that goes for all of us, even in this context right now.
When you said even in this context right now, what do you tell us more about that, Ihsan?
Because like, even before we got on here, all of us are just breaking our rest, right? Before we got on here, Eric had the responsibilities of his 2 other shows today, right? 2 other interviews, public interviews, and then your job. And Tyrice, you're in another continent right now. You're on Thursday. We're still on Wednesday, right? All of us just showing up here requires some level of sacrifice. And whatever happens in that context is based on what we have in our reservoir to pull from and what God allows us to speak to. But just showing up sometime is a victory. Just waking up, right?
Just waking up. You know, waking up is a victory, and remembering how much agency you have to affect your own thinking to affect your mood, to affect your outlook, to affect your outreach, right? And to affect your inreach. We have so much at our fingertips that we can just grab hold of. And sometimes the main issue is that we feel like in those moments we have nothing. We feel depleted. We feel ineffective. We feel broken. And it's in those spaces where our brokenness may be highlighted, where the areas where we feel weak or we actually may need to grow, that is highlighted. And that's why we need community. That's why we need brothers and sisters, people that we can reach out. That's why we need God. That's why we need everything at our fingertips. That's one of the things I work with my clients on, and I use myself when I'm in ministry, I'm doing therapy. Most of the time, my days look like both. I start out from 6 or 5 something in the morning down to 9 something at night, doing ministry and therapy and ministry mixed in there. And a lot of the people who I'm called to are God's leaders. So the people who I'm usually assigned to are people who start churches, people who run ministry, people who run organizations, those who have the weight of many people on them are usually those who I work with on a regular basis, where that line of ministry and work kind of collide. I don't think it's a mixing of boundaries, because when your life is what you're calling, your calling, your life is your ministry, it moves into vocation, right? You live your vocation. And so it's knowing how to be able to both hold yourself, right? Your manness, your blackness, your brotherness, your sisterness, your fatherness, your motherness, everything that you are, not letting that go, holding it in light of who God made you to be, while you say, now I'm going to bring this into the context of what I'm called to do, and then bring with the context of what I'm called to do into this. Because there are times, I know, Eric, where you have to pull from what you just talked to some fathers about in the fathering circle, or what you just talked to somebody about on the radio, or what you just talked to someone about in a community, and bring it home a little bit, and then bring what you just did home with your children into the community while maintaining boundaries. It may seem like the boundaries are diffuse, but it's really just, you know what? I am my work, and my work is me, because my work isn't my job. My work is my calling, and my calling isn't just a calling. My calling is a vocation. And so a lot of times people may say that that's a misnomer. They may say that shows a lack of self-care. But the truth of the matter is, the people that do this and they live this, you can say, you know what? When I try to separate myself from what I do, and what I do from myself, there's a hole in whatever context I'm trying to separate this from. Ihsan, when you go into these spaces of self-care, or you're talking to a group of white male construction workers who in their own spaces, they feel marginalized, forgotten, and unheard, and you come in there as a Black man into this space, you're bringing your context, you're coming in as a Black man whose brother has lost his life to suicide and depression, who is coming out of his own. They miss the color after a while. They see the color, and then they see the brotherhood, because as a woman who's worked in construction, excuse me if Miss Preach just popped up, but
Come on.
as a woman who's worked in the construction industry, in the construction field, I know, because when they find out just a little bit of therapist is leaked onto the construction site, they come into my office, and we supposed to be talking about them doing their work in the field, or giving me this invoice. And now we're talking about what causes them depression, anxiety, how they don't feel heard, and everything that you went to speak to them about, Ihsan.
Yeah.
And so how can we truly separate these things? I say attend to both of them, recognize that they are in their own basket, and sometimes the contents mixes. And when you need a rest, when you need a break, you take that. And sometimes the break isn't stopping the work.
Mm.
Sometimes the break is in a hug.
Mm.
Sometimes the break is in a prayer in the moment while you're on a stage or while you're working with a client. And the very thing that God has healed you from, you have to speak to a person about in the moment. And reach out and say, you know what, fortify me, because I'm about to go into this very field that I fell in,
Mm.
right?
All right.
Fortify
Yeah.
me.
Everyone, thank you. That's it. That's the end of the show. Rob, drop the
No.
mic. You know. No, that's beautiful and so on point. And you're so absolutely right. And just deeply, deeply profound. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah.
Yeah. I was supposed to be asking a question, and the little bit
Miss
of
Preach.
preach just
Miss
popped
Preach
up.
came out. Miss
It just
Preach is always welcome. Miss Preach is
But
always
you know
welcome.
what? In light, all right, in light of the current events, and we have many, right, many current events going on. Tell me what do you have to say? I think that question, what do you have to say? Because I don't want to put a box on it. Definitely, because Ihsan, when I talk to you, I see Ihsan Hines, but I also see a man that represents MBK Cares. When
Right.
I talk to you, Eric Marsh, I see a man that represents, I can't even all of the things, right? It's a father and son, like all I can't even say all of the things right now. And I see a man that represents, you are not these things you represent. You are not MBK Cares, but you represent this. Talk to me and talk to the world about what you have to say about what's going on out here in these streets.
Um, Eric, can you address this first?
Sure. I'll take a leap at it. What's going on? I just want to say, more of the same is what's going on, right? The reality is that more of the same is happening. The thing about it is that I feel like all of these, when we talk about context, right? We're talking about what people had hoped would be the end of the pandemic, right? But we're still hearing about cases now on the rise. When we talk about context, we're talking about, in the midst of the Derek Chauvin trial for the murder of George Floyd, another young man is murdered by another police officer, supposedly by mistake. When we talk about context, we're talking about, the vaccinations that everybody is supposed to be getting. And now, oops, hold on, wait a minute. We can't take that one now. So let's put a pause on it. Like all of this turmoil and uproar and trauma and all of this stuff. But the reality is the context is it's not new. It's not new. And if you've been paying attention for any length of period of time, one of the things that I've learned in relation to this context is that it all comes back to us as individuals and how we process these things that are going on, how we maintain our wellness and center our wellness in the midst of the storm. Because like that old saying goes, this too shall pass, this too shall pass. And some more stuff is going to come and that's going to pass too. So in the meantime, how do we fortify ourselves, to use the word that you use, and how do we, understand that the noise and the drama that is the context that we're operating in is less significant than the relationships and the wellness that we cultivate closest to us in our circle of influence. What's happening in your immediate circle of influence? And I think that's one of the things that we lose sight of. And I think society has kind of wavered a little bit. We've really veered away from it for a very long time. And then the pandemic started recentering how important community is, how important self and wellness is, how important family is, how important your spirituality is. When those things start becoming the center of your life and you start focusing on that, you're more able to carry that burden that we talked about earlier. You're more able to look at the things that are happening outside And instead of being reactionary, which is what a lot of people in the community are, you're able to strategize and you're able to plan and think about what's my next move. Is this next move that I'm thinking about the best move? Is it long-term gratification or is it short-term gratification? So for me, that's what, like, the context that we're in is really relying on the fact that, you know, for me, it's a reminder to stay centered. This symbol over my shoulder, this yin and yang, I have that there on purpose, because for me, it's a reminder to stay balanced. It's a philosophy. It's not a religion, but it's a philosophy in how you should be operating in relation to life. And it's really about being balanced. So for me, that's the context. That's how I'm treating the context. Ihsan?
I love how even the yin and yang sign has like black and white within it too, like working in harmony in a circle.
That's that. So just a point of clarity, right? That's the reason why it looks like that, because the philosophy is that everything contains a part of its opposite. And so this idea that we're divided, that this is a direct opposition to this idea that we're all separate and all divided. We all contain a part of what we may consider other or different or opposite. And again, that is just, for me, it's a reminder.
Thanks for sharing your context, Eric. So, and what balance looks like and means and how necessary it is for you, and a reminder of, like, when you said that, I think about something that I speak to my clients about a lot, and it's what does balance look like, right? A lot of times we think balance is equal parts on both sides.
Ty, Eric, can you still hear me?
I can hear you. I think her signal froze a
Okay.
little bit.
To our audience, please be patient. Tyrice is in Africa right now, so maybe some technical difficulties on her end.
Yeah. Yeah, her signal dropped for a little bit. But just to pick up when I'd like to hear, you didn't get a chance to share what context looks like, what this context is for you, and how are you managing or navigating this context?
I'm struggling with it at times, but one thing I am doing, which is parallel to faith, right? I know this is not just for believers. There's not necessarily just a Christian audience out here. The testimonies about, like, when Jesus did a miracle, I believe he fed the thousands with the fish. I believe, like, when you hear miracles that he did, it's not just so that he could be this magician, but it's so that when something happens that's similar to the experience, even if it's not fish, if it's just something similar to not having provision or healing being necessary, you can look back and say, all right, I struggled before, a need was met, it's possible. So the context of this year, although it still looks like a lot of things from last year, one thing that it is here for me is recognition that I made it through last year, right? So I can look and say, you know what, it was hard before, and it's going to be hard again one day. Even when this is peaceful, it's going to be hard, but these are parts of the ebb and flows of life, the ups and downs, and it will come back to a point of being somewhat balanced or smooth or peaceful. It'll be rainy, it'll be sunny. So there's hope that comes out of looking at last year when I'm seeing these current circumstances. However, it's still disheartening to see these circumstances come, because I know the grief that's being caused to people who may not have the resources that are at my ready. People may not have an Eric Marsh or a Tyrice that they can reach out to. They may be in a toxic environment and they don't have the resources in home. When kids have to go to school in the same place that is toxic for them, they no longer get to go to a school building to escape a home environment that may be very toxic. I feel sad for those people. You know what I mean? And then I also am learning and realizing more and more and more the importance of male guidance and fatherhood. My dad is in my life now, right? But and I never would disrespect my father, but my dad is not who raised me. I was raised by a single mom. And the more that I realize when certain circumstances come up, as for example, when I talked about going into Xfinity Live, It's a moment where you fathered me, and you're a pair, you're a little older than me, but you fathered me in that moment to say, you know what, you can
Who,
do this.
me?
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Just, but it's just like to have brothers, say like, I know what struggle is like, and struggle is part of the process of life. It's
Mhm.
instead of, it's not like when you see shows of like men don't cry or boys don't cry, whatever. That's not real. So then when you're told like, you know what, brother, I struggled, you're going to get through this.
Mm,
It now helps you to say, you know what, I don't have, it helps you to be like in the garden. You can just
mm,
be naked. And I'm not trying to say that on those funny stuff, but it's just, I can be me weak, and you can help me
mm,
be strong. Or I can lean on somebody in a moment where I'm weak, and they can say, you know what, brother, I'm gonna hold you up until you can stand
mm.
on your own. And then one day I'm gonna need you to hold me up. And that's just part of the circle. It's not that you did a favor for a favor, but it's just realizing like, young brother, I've been where you are. It's gonna be all right.
Yo, I have to say, first of all, I'm deeply touched by what you shared, and I'm always touched by what you shared. And the reality is, I'll crack a joke or I'll try to laugh, or I just, because I kind of keep moving. I want to keep it moving. You know what I mean? Don't focus on me too much, right?
Yeah.
Because we know how the ego can take over sometimes. And so that's one of the things. But I do want to give credit where credit is due, and recognize something. First of all, I'm not a particularly religious person,
Right.
but I do honor God and recognize and try to walk a spiritual life. And I appreciate women like Tyrice and others who speak into my life. I was on a radio interview earlier, and I told you this, with Andrea Lawful Sanders. And after our conversation was over, after the show stopped, we were talking, and something she shared with me she directly spoke to the vulnerability and openness that I've shared with people over the
Mhm.
years and that I've exhibited and walked in, and how that is a strength, and that's something that I need. And so what you just said just confirmed what she said hours ago. And that as men, we have to start to examine this vulnerability and this. And my cousin made a great point when he told me about being careful about using that word of vulnerability, being vulnerable, right? Being vulnerable means you're susceptible to harm. What he said that we should be using in place of that is open-hearted.
Mhm.
And as men, we need to be open-hearted. We need to open up our hearts and our souls, and welcome that sensitivity and that care and that empathy, because that's what you were just describing. Was all I did was care for you in that moment. And I think if we continue to do that as men, and particularly with just a reference to fathers, that's my bag, right? That's the thing that I feel like is most, there's science behind the study of men, and the moment when men become fathers, when a child is born and a man has to hold an infant and process in his mind that this is his child, all sorts of endorphins flood his bloodstream. His hormone system changes, pivots a little bit. The estrogen and testosterone balance changes. And all of those things make it more possible for that man to care for that child in a way that we haven't done prior to that moment in life, right? And so I use that moment and that opportunity to encourage men to share that feeling with everyone else around you. Like, it's not just your child. Like, you shouldn't just limit that sense of care and empathy and concern to your child, because like I always say, my child has to go outside and play with somebody else's child,
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
My son, who's 26 right now,
Mhm.
is walking around in the street in a city where young men his age are vulnerable and likely to be killed. So I know what I can do for my child, but I can't stop there with just him. It has to extend beyond that if I want to create a safe environment for my entire family and my entire community. And that's why that piece there is so important. That fatherhood piece to me is so important, because that's like a crack in the foundation, right? All of this thing that we're taught as men to be isolated and stoic and closed off. That moment, and there's lots of them that happen over the course of our lifetime. We aren't born with this armor on, right? We get layers and layers applied to us over our childhood. But it's that moment that often like shows a cleave in the armor, a crack that you can then open up and you can see somebody's heart inside. And so like, just thank you for that, because all of this is full circle, and it's just really meant that it shows me that we're meant to be having these conversations. Hey, Ty.
Welcome back.
Welcome back.
Hey, y'all. Thank you. One of the areas here that I feel like is an actual injustice for people in South Africa is the issues with data and connectivity. It costs so much money for the people to be connected virtually and with data and airtime. They have to pay a lot. So I had some connectivity issues, and I also because I'm a woman of God, I know that there are no coincidences in the things that happen in my life, because what happened tonight has never happened to me since I have been using this data. And so it always gives me a great opportunity to check in and say, hey, Lord, what are you saying? What is it that I'm supposed to be hearing, saying, seeing, whatever have you. But I'm happy that I was able to come on right at the right point, because that was beautiful what you just shared, Eric. So, hey guys.
Thank you.
You know, when somebody come back to the convo and you like, oh yeah, okay, so this is what we thought, this is what we were talking about, you know, this is what we was at. Ihsan, you had asked me a question earlier, and you wanted to ask me about walking in, I guess, in ministry, and also in light of the various things that happen in the world. And so I was thinking about that. What I don't know is if you touched on it while I was out here trying to get this connectivity back on. And I don't know if I'm coming from left field. I hope I'm not. And family out there in the world, sorry if I'm coming from left field. Forgive you, girl. Forgive you, sis. Okay.
No, you good.
Please forgive you, sis.
Just speak your truth.
But I wanted to ask you more about what you asked me. You asked this to me before we got on today. I wanted to hear about that, because it sounded like it was something that actually is near and dear to my heart. But I feel like it also might be near and dear to your heart too, Eric. Right?
So just the context of it. I drive overnight for my job. And while I was driving, I had a moment where I was like thinking about like current circumstances, just a moment where I don't know if it was a certain song. I can't remember what it was, but and be careful with the songs you listen to too. Like certain songs will make you think of things. But whatever it was, I was driving and I started just thinking about like the past. I started thinking about like cycles. I find myself with certain things and patterns happening every April, like just certain experiences. I found myself thinking like, Dad, God, we have to die one day. Like not in a way that was morbid, like I want to take my life, but it's like, you know what? Like sometimes you don't think about it, like we all are going to go. And what we're seeing on television with these deaths by the police, or even the murders just within our own community that had nothing to do with police, it's disheartening, because any day feels like it could be your last, which is a truth anyway. Death is promised to all of us. So I found myself thinking like, God, the only hope we have beyond this is that the things we believe are true, whether that be if you're a Muslim, a Christian, whatever your belief is, that there's an afterlife, right? And I found myself just thinking like, Dad, God, it's really difficult. And the irony of this, I was driving by my church. I go to E9 and I was on Shoreham Avenue. And I found myself thinking like, God, sometimes believing is hard. And like, that is something that I never really say to God, like, God, I said, like, I gotta believe, I want to believe. Then I realized like, God, certain things I fight to believe. Like I really want to believe, but the context, particularly when it comes to Christianity, is I want to believe in Jesus. And I do believe in Jesus. I want the afterlife. I want the peace that comes with God. I want the community that comes with his believers and his fellowship. I want to enjoy even in the sufferings that build character and all these other things that come with that fruit. But I struggle with who delivers the message of the faith that I believe, right? When when you look at historically, there's like a white agenda right now, or a white supremacy agenda that we see playing out within our country and our world. And to think like the hands that delivered a faith to us or the books to us came through some of those same hands, that's where the struggle is. And I'm like, God, it's hard to believe a message that was passed by the oppressor. And I found myself just struggling with that. And if I believe that, and I am somebody who works in ministry and somebody who has a relationship with God, I felt sad just thinking about other people out here who have no relationship with God and won't even get past that pitfall at all of I'm not accepting any white man's religion, or I'm not accepting this and that. Because if all the things we talk about with wellness, if you can't get past that, there's no hope. Like if there's no hope in God or afterlife or even appreciation for life, then life has no value. Your own or your brothers or your sisters, your children. I'm sorry, I don't know if that addressed everything, but that's what was going on in my head and what comes around sometimes.
Yeah, that's a very real question. Before I say anything, Eric, what Ihsan said, what did that bring up for you, or any questions, or even like any kind of, I can't even get the word out, but just what did it bring up for you? Like that right there, the dance that comes in the conversation.
It did. It brought that up. And I'm gonna be very transparent, right? I have struggled with my relationship with religion for most of my life. I don't any longer subscribe to any one religion. I want to say to you, Ihsan, about what you shared is that even within your belief system, even within Christianity, even within the Bible and the stories that you believe in, despite the fact of what you were saying about who delivered it, it still talks about a man with feet of bronze and hair of wool, right? It talks about the origin and the areas and the Euphrates and the part of the world where we're from, where people of color are from, right? So it talks about the central figures in your belief system in Christianity are people of color, right? So despite who's delivering the story, this is the one thing that I learned a long time ago, is that even the devil knows the Bible because he's in it, right? And so the reality is, what is the truth for you? Where is the truth in the story, right? What they say, what's that old saying about, don't despite the message for the messenger, right? There's something in it. There's a truth beneath all of the rhetoric that people are sharing and telling you. And so you have to one, study, and you have to recognize that there's possible to take the meat and spit out the bone, right? And understanding that what matters the most, and this is something that I firmly believe in. So I've had to move along a spectrum away from this idea of hoping for heaven and an afterlife to recognizing that what we have right now could be heaven. What we have right now is what we have an impact on. And I don't know what God has planned for me. I don't know what my future is planned. I don't know what my next day, but I know I know what I can do today, right? I know what influence I can have in the kind of environment that I want to leave for my children. And so based on that, I can't get into the debate on religion versus spirituality versus metaphysics. I can't get into debate think about Christianity in itself and how divided into so many different sects and segments it is over man's misunderstanding of text, right? So again, we have more in common than we have different. And so for me, I love some theoretical debate. I love to get into all of that, right? But it's just an exercise for me. The way I live my life has to be grounded in today and what I want tomorrow to look like, what kind of impact I can have on tomorrow. And the reality is, again, just thinking about mortality. I was in a meeting earlier this week at work, And we were talking about how to invest in your IRA, right? How to invest in 403B and all of that, right? And I'm in a meeting with all millennials, with all 20 somethings. And the woman who was trying to sell the insurance package, like the investment package, retirement package, is saying that, well, you know, women are likely to live until the average age is like 87, right? And it's mostly women in the meeting. Meanwhile, men die much sooner than that. You know, we don't make it to 87. And so as these young women were talking, they were kind of kicking around the idea of like, we're supposed to save 20% of our income. I just don't think I could do that. And you know what? I want to, you know, a retirement home is $90,000 a year. And, you know, I don't know. And I'm sitting here at 51 years old, listening to these folks like, y'all need to get y'all stuff together today because tomorrow's not promised. And if I had had this information when I was your age, oh, I would definitely have a 403B and an IRA Roth. And I would. So what I'm saying, the reason why I bring that story up is because it's so easy to theorize about tomorrow and what's going to happen afterwards. But what are you doing today to prepare to make a better tomorrow?
Right.
What are you doing to make heaven on earth? As opposed to, and again, I'm not saying I believe or don't believe, because I still struggle with it. I work with it. You know, me and God, we got our own thing going on, right? As everyone should. But what I say, what you just brought to mind was just, again, think about what is my circle of influence? What do I have an impact on right now in my life? And what can I do to ensure that that this world is better for others when I leave it, whenever that day might be?
Tyrice, can you speak to that?
Yeah, you know, I have a lot to say on that. I'm looking at time like, you want me to speak? All right.
Yes, I do.
So, okay. Ihsan, you as you were speaking and you were talking about kind of our sight on the things of life and how we see it, and then how that affects our belief in our God, and then the messages that come from other people, right? As a reverend, as a woman of God, as a woman of science, that to me they actually go hand in hand. I've pondered and I ponder all these things, right? And you were talking about basically, what do I do when my faith is shaken based on what I see, what I feel, what's happening in the world, what I think, and what other people say? How do I stand? And Eric, what Eric gave you, when you're talking about kind of what we have to look forward to, there's this message that many followers of Christ, I like to say, many followers of Christ, so people who decide to literally follow Christ, because we have Christianity, but how many people are genuinely taking the time to learn about Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior, and actually say, I'm going to follow after your footsteps? Because when we try to follow after man, that's where we get lost. Right? And even to go back to something Eric said about the yin and the yang, and about how like there's a little bit of something in everything. The only way that I don't see where that fits is when it comes to God, because the word says that God is light and there's no darkness in him. And when we try to attribute man's qualities to God, we make a mistake in making God small and man bigger. And that's where our faith can shake and be shaky a little bit, because now my foundation isn't just on the rock of who Christ is. My foundation is a little bit standing on the rock of Christ, and a little bit on these current events, a little bit on the rock of Christ, and a little bit on what people say or what I think. And so it's that refocusing. So even what Eric said is like, hey, look and see how you can bring heaven to earth now. Even in what a lot of people call the Lord's Prayer, but I don't call it the Lord's Prayer, because he says, forgive us our sins, and Jesus Christ didn't have any. That was how he was able to be who he was and appropriate for all of our sins, because he was sinless. He didn't have darkness in him. He said, There is none of that found in me. So he was able to actually, so it's not the Lord's Prayer. It's a prayer that he was teaching us on how to pray. He says, when he says on earth as it is in heaven, on earth as it is in heaven. And if we understand kingdom principles, we can actually go back to what Eric was saying, and is how can we bring the kingdom of God, or how can we demonstrate, because the kingdom is here, how can we demonstrate the kingdom of God on earth as it is in heaven until the day that we go and we see Abba face to face? One of the things that I believe that many of us as followers of Christ, and I feel like this is for everyone, because it's for everyone. Everybody just doesn't always accept it. And that's having an intimate relationship with God.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Jesus Christ didn't just die for our sins so that we can go to heaven. It wasn't like, I'm gonna die for you now so that you can have me at the end of your life. He's like, I died for your sins so that you can be reconciled back to the Father. I ripped the veil, and you don't have to go through religion to have me. You have to just understand that I am the way to have an intimate relationship with the Father, the one that knows you in the innermost fibers of your being. And so then prayer looks different. It doesn't sound like the hemming and the hawing and all that other stuff that we've heard. It just sounds like, I just don't know what to do right now, Lord.
Yep.
Show me where you are in this moment, right? And so, or an intimate relationship looks like, you know what? Today has been a lot. Where are you in this? How am I supposed to see this? Let me see this person as you see them. The person that's getting on your nerves, right? Tap dancing, just Sammy Davis Jr. and all over your nerves, right? You're like, how am I supposed to see this person? And then now there's an exchange happening in the moment, and you have a knowing of they had a rough day today too.
Yep.
Or you have this knowing of, you know what? They don't know me, but they can learn me through you. What are you showing, son or daughter? Who do you look like right now? Do you look like me, or do you look like the enemy? And so we have that part, and our focus moves back to God, right? Because the truth of the matter is, this world is both one of the most beautiful places that I've ever seen, because I haven't been anywhere else. Have you?
No.
I mean, I've been on earth. All right, I've been on earth. I've been here, and it's beautiful when I get a chance to explore what God has created. It's beautiful when I get a chance to have these exchanges with my brothers and my sisters. It's beautiful when I get a chance to just sit here in South Africa, y'all. Oh my God. I'm with a man and woman of God, and I'm assisting with their church plant here in an area called Xeris, this rural area in South Africa. And as we're driving, they have a sunroof, and I looked up because it was hot, and I needed a little bit of air, and I looked up, y'all, and the sky was so clear.
Wow.
And I could see every single star. And they're looking at me like, so, I'm like, y'all, you take this for granted, but where I come from, I see just a couple of them, just a couple little glimmer, look, 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 and you forget that the stars are there. And when I look up and I see the stars shining, and I'm like, wow, God, you made this. And when I don't fully know why you made all those planets and masses and balls of gas and whatever else is out there and the celestials, right? And I don't actually know the why of it all, I can enjoy the beauty of it here on earth and look at it and say, how glorious is your name when I see everything that you've created. And so my eye goes into an understanding that he's bigger than what I see. And when I don't understand him in light of what I see, I have to remember he is not this box of my understanding. God, show me. He's not white. And truth of the matter, y'all, polished bronze I don't look like polished bronze. I don't look like polished bronze. And there are many different ways that the Middle Eastern woolly hair looked. It can be like my own, and it can have like that shearling kind of wave with a little curl at the bottom. So when we get into these debates about whether or not Jesus was a dark-skinned black man with locks, or if he was a Middle Eastern man with wavy hair, I don't care. He's my Lord and Savior. What I do know is that people have taken that debate where we try to make God small and man-like and have used it to enslave people. We take a cultural conversation in a book meant for a forever people, written to a people of that day, and we say, you know what? This is not for all of us because of what man has taken and done with it, because they never understood who Christ was in the first place. He came to liberate all people. So how can I take and put him in the box of a white man's religion or the black man? What? No. He knows me beyond my color. He knows me and my spirit, man. He knows that today I'm going to meet an Afrikaans person that looks at me like you're coming in and you're trying to take our land, but sir or man, y'all took the land of the people, and I still need to see that person as a creation of God. And Lord, what are you saying about this white South African in this movie? And what would you like to say to this creation? And possibly one of your children that forgot that you are love, and love is beyond. Love understands color. Love sees color. Love sees culture. Love understands the differences. It both deals with us in our context of color, culture, and differences. And then it says, but your connecting force is what made you, and spirit that is beyond your color. Your spirit goes beyond, it goes into the afterlife, and it connects with God today. Today, in this very moment. So I'm sorry, I hope I spoke to it.
Yeah, you did.
You know,
You and Eric
but
did.
you know,
I'm sorry.
so
What
no,
I
I'm just
had, what came from my experience last night, which was a good thing, was a Terry moment where just was like crying out, and what God wanted like speaking to me about was seeing that, yeah, this Bible is the word of God, but don't forget that it's also testimonies of people's experiences with God. So read it as that as well. Read it that it's not that if you do X, Y, and Z that this person did, the same outcome is going to happen for you. It's just to show that a God of love allowed this, he worked in this person's life in this way. Because if you look at it just to see, if you look at any experience in life, whether even this, eliminate the Bible, just talk right now, right? Just you and I and Eric. If I say, go outside, turn left, turn right, and you'll find $5 on the ground, just because I did it doesn't mean it's going to happen for you. But what it is to say, you know, something good happened to me when I went outside today. And I didn't find $5, but I'm saying the purpose of the story is there's something in the testimony that's supposed to inspire hope and belief of like God moved in my life this way. And if we don't look at it that way, you can get lost in when it's a low that he's using, because there's times within the testimonies of the Bible where he allowed people to experience lack. But the purpose of it was for character development, to inspire more, whatever it was. Some stories happened that had nothing to do with people, particularly, and I know this is becoming something else, but it's still necessary. Joseph, when Joseph was like thrown into the pit and was betrayed by his brothers, when he got to the end of it, he said that you meant it for evil, but God meant it for good, right? But not for his own good. He meant it for the good of a people yet to come. So he meant it for a testimony of generations that had not even been born yet. He meant it for us. You know what I'm saying? So some stories are just testimony to say, you know what, regardless of what's going on, God is good. Regardless of what's going on, God is in control. And that was a moment that I needed last night. That's a moment most people probably need out here, because those things impact your mental health in ways that are hard to escape if you don't see it that way. If you don't believe that you deserve love and that you come from a source of love, the source of love, it can be a struggle sometimes to hold on. It can really be that. So I thought that was really decent, and that actually helped me get through my night different. It helped me come home and get some sleep. So I didn't mean it to just make it about my personal struggles, but I am glad that I was able to identify that struggle and at that moment of vulnerability and just put it out there. But I do appreciate what y'all said. I'm not discounting anything you all said. It's not contrary. It's and yes instead of and, but it's yes and.
And the reality is everything that you shared, everything that, and you know, first of all, Tyrice, you ended by saying, I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Same thing with Ihsan. There is purpose in what we are doing. And there's a benefit that someone else out there is watching, right? That someone else is seeing this conversation and they're saying, I just had the same feeling. I just went through that. I'm in the middle of it, right? You know, these recordings, they live on for however long you keep them on. Facebook gonna keep them forever, but however long you keep them on YouTube, right? Someone is gonna come across it. And regardless of their faith, and this is another reason, like, again, understanding why you don't get caught up in that. And Tyrice, I'm telling you, I used to be all with the lingo. I know all of the terminology and it's gone now, and I can't remember any of it. But there's you know, the scholarly part of Christianity and being able to understand what we're doing right here. Like there's a name for it, but understanding like this struggle is part of the testimony. It's part of life. It's part of what we're meant to do. And this is what we're doing. This fellowship that we're doing here is exactly for that reason, for us to grow in it and grow in our understanding and grow in our ability to function day to day and spread that to other people. Like this is your ministry. MBKCares, this Wellness Wednesday, it's all another form of ministry to reach to people. So I'm gonna ask each of you to stop apologizing.
I apologize for apologizing. How about that?
Yeah, you know what? I'll be apologizing when the preach come out and I feel like I took up a little bit more space, because the truth of the matter, I could keep on going. That's me saying, Ty, reel it in. But you know what, Ihsan, what you were saying about if this is turning into something else, I still think it's still talking about self-care.
No, it's turning into something better. I didn't mean it in a bad way. It's turning into something that's
okay. One of the things that so spirituality is called a protective factor therapeutically. It's known as a protective factor to deal with the risk factors of life. And the way that we're able to connect with something beyond ourselves and bigger than ourselves is something that's so necessary, because sometimes life feels like it is so much bigger than us, because it is.
Right.
And so that's why, even in the vein of discussing self-care, it's also important to talk about, what do you do when the very thing that you run to feels shaky? You know, that's a part of self-care. It's like, yo, this is all I got right here, and I don't even know where I stand with it. How do I handle it when I'm tired of seeing Black people get killed? When I'm wondering, because what Mr. or Miss Preach so-and-so told me is I'm supposed to have abundance, but I'm over here working these 4 jobs. What do I do when I'm not sure I believe in God? And you know what? Matter of fact, I believe I am God. Some people, they're like, you know, whatever, I'm God, you know, and that's where they are. Is what do I do when we're with the larger discourse of life is shifting how I'm seeing myself, my higher power, whether I believe I have one. What do I do with that? And that's a big part of self-care for most people.
Yep.
You know, and like it's shifting Eric's decor. You know, it's shifted my whole location, you know, where I'm at in life. It's shifting what you do, Ihsan. So it's not even just shifting Eric's decor. Eric, one of the things I know is you ponder so much on a regular basis. I love when me and Eric get a chance to sit and talk, man. It's just
rich.
Some of the most, it's very rich, and some of the most building time. And what we can miss as people is allowing our differences to divide us, rather than to let them be opportunities for us to grow and understand. and looking to see, not so much as all the time. I think sometimes we try to make peace by looking at our similarities. And I really feel like that it doesn't allow us to, or it doesn't speak to our many opportunities of growth. I don't have to look for our similarities to have peace with you.
Mm,
Why can't I just honor you in the space?
mm, mm.
Let my peace be based on the fact that you are alive. And there's value in the fact that you are breathing. There's value that you're a human being. You have had experiences. They are much different than my own. Can peace be based on us deciding to share and join? Maybe not in our agreement with one another, but in our recognition that at the core of ourselves, we are here and we were created, and there's a reason. And what do you have to bring to this space? And what do I have to bring to this space? And is there a way that we can work together in a space of healing, even if it's just an exchange of hello?
Yes.
I have a question, Tyrice, this is actually for all of us. How do we teach that, right? Because that's not an easy place to get to. And although there's the father and the parent and the caregiver in me recognizes that many of us, when we're born, we start off with that spirit, right? That understanding. But we often lose it very early on, right? How do we nurture that? How do we pass that on to other individuals, both young and old? Because I think what you just described, if all of us were able to operate in that way, we wouldn't see, 90% of the conflicts that we do. So how do we nurture that? How do we instill that in folks?
I will say the first step is humility, right? Can you guys hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good. Y'all faces was
We
still.
was
I
on
was
the
like,
edge
oh
of our
man, did
seats.
No.
I'm like, did I miss disconnection? I was like, oh, um,
Sorry. Go ahead.
Eric
I,
said
I
we're
think
on the edge of our seats. We were.
I think the first step is humility,
Mhm.
because pride says what I have to say is more important than sometimes even who you are. What I believe, what I am is more important than you. I'm elevated and I'm elevating and making myself big and yourself in contrast small. But what if I can humble myself moment by moment and know that I don't know it all, recognize what I think I know, and what I will know is my experience. That no one can take from me. No one can take away the fact that God saved my life. Nobody can take away that He healed my body like multiple times. Nobody can take that away from me. And that I'll hold. But let's talk about it. Let's talk about the context, right? Let's talk about let me hear your perspective. And know that if I sit with you, this you is the everybody you. If I sit with another and I allow where they come from to have space in the place, right? And they allow where I come from to have space in the place. And maybe there'll be places where they converge and places where they diverge. Us understand that that's okay. We're all on this journey of life together. Where I come from and my belief system and where I stand and what my whole life pivots upon, right? Maybe fully and utterly or diametrically opposed on where your life pivots. But I won't know even the places of where we can gain understanding if I don't give you a little bit of moment, right? If I don't give space for your breath. So I'll just speak on like that humility space. I say we start there and we teach that and we encourage that within our own self first. So I'll start. Ihsan or
Ihsan,
Eric
any
even.
thoughts? I have
Yeah,
something to add.
Eric, you actually said something to me yesterday when just on a one-on-one conversation. I was talking about needing to like have a conversation with someone I haven't spoken to in a while, and you told me something. You said, in your experience with that type of conflict resolution, is sooner is better than later. Like it's better to get it done sooner. So I think that in terms of to go along with what Tyrice was talking about, the humility is to realize, first of all, that includes sometimes saying I'm wrong, right? Realizing like, or I've mishandled the situation. Because what's caused, particularly, I don't want to put business out there with detail, but there's just a communication gap. There's no conflict, there's no argument. There's just a big gap of communication between me and someone else. So I mishandled the situation. And part of humility is going to require, not just in this context, because it's not just about me, but within all contexts, whether I mishandle parenthood, showing the work late, whatever it may be that people in our experiences handle wrong, realizing like, I need to do a better job of this right here, and then taking steps to do that. So even in this moment, I have levels of conviction and things that are coming to my memory. There's some things that just need to be done sooner instead of putting it off, because when you put it off, whether it's saying sorry to somebody, whether it's allowing somebody else to speak truth to you that you need to consume and allow to sit with you so that you can allow them to get what's on their mind too. But there's some conversations that need to be heard, because I think even within our context of race relations in this country, if we would listen to each other more, we would understand each other more, and then we would understand where we're coming from, whether it be Black people experiencing the injustice or white people feeling like they're losing some power, or the oppressor, because every white person isn't that way. But the people who have, it's a sacrifice on both parts. In order for them to give up the abundance they have, and for us to come up from the lack we've had, is going to require them coming down to our level and us going up to them, so that the seesaw is balanced a little more. So it's a loss here and it's a gain here, but it's an adjustment for both. To come down to that is an adjustment, and to go up to it is an adjustment. Learning to be responsible with this new power or this new resource, and learning how to accept less of it and working in harmony.
Well, let me just add to that, because what you just said touched on what I wanted to respond to Tyrice, or add to what she was saying about speaking from the perspective of a Black man. The humility, right, and being humble is a great idea. But unfortunately, what happens is we also run the risk of, again, with that use of that word I mentioned earlier, vulnerability. And in this case, I do mean vulnerability, not open-heartedness, because humbling yourself the way we've been conditioned as men means to put yourself in a position of weakness or vulnerability in relation to another. And one of the things that we often don't encourage or we don't teach, and I think this is where your relationship with God comes in, is knowing that you're covered and that you are protected. So you can be vulnerable and you can be open-hearted, and then you can then practice that humility because you know you're safe. You can't ask people who are afraid for their well-being. You can't ask people who are afraid for their own personal safety or their own, to Ihsan's point, their livelihood or their possessions, to be humble and vulnerable when they think that's going to get taken away, no matter how much of a great idea it is and how productive it might be for the other side. So again, I think it goes hand in hand with that humility, is teaching people abundance, right? And teaching people that God got you and that you're going to be okay. I think what you shared earlier, Tyrice, just what you shared about riding in the car and seeing the stars is a beautiful analogy, because we are here. those stars are already will remain there. They're there, whether we can see them or not. And that's the abundance that I was talking about. Like, so to be able to embrace that concept, that knowledge, not a concept, that knowledge that God is there, he got us, that we're going to be okay. And therefore, I can be humble and be open and receptive to all that you have. That's the biggest thing, one of the biggest things I think that we're struggling with. And just speaking from the perspective as a man, and specifically a Black man, being humble is like, I'm here, I'm open, I'm vulnerable, but I'm gonna be okay.
That right there. Thank you so much, Eric, for adding that, because when you said, I was like, yes, that part right there, that part, because I knew I was just giving one little piece, because there's so much for everybody to add. May I share something, a scripture that man, it changed my life. Well, a lot of it has changed my life, but this one has changed my life, and it goes along with that question about how can we live this love, or how can we live in this space of not avoiding, and peace is not the avoidance of conflict. Okay, yes. I just want to throw that in there. Just want to throw that in there, because a lot of times people think they want to be peaceful, so hands are up. No, I'm gonna say this. In the Christian context, sometimes peace comes at the hand of war. And that war definitely is spiritual. So when I may come to a person and I say, by the authority of Jesus Christ, I call forth peace in the wholeness of yourself. There is war that happens. Every single thing around you that wants you to feel down and downtrodden and everything like that. There is a war in the heavenlies just for you to come out of this place of bondage into a place of peace. There's war there just in the spiritual space. And sometimes there's a war within our own selves with our thoughts and our understandings so that we can get to a place of peace. Sometimes you need to struggle with a thing, with a person, to be able to bring all of our stuff out to the table so we can get to repair. Peace is not always the absence of discord. It's what do we do with it? And how do we stay in the light of it? But that's not what I was going to share. So I was going to share, it was from James. It's from the book of James, James 3 and 17. James 3:17, and I'll just say 3:18. This helps me because I thank the Lord and for a measure of wisdom. I used to be like, I'm a wise woman and all this other stuff. But then when he showed me this, he was like, are you really? Like, let me, I've given you much, but what wisdom are you operating from? I was like, oh God, thank you for the check. It says, right, it says, but the wisdom that is from above is first pure, then peaceable, gentle, willing to yield, full of mercy and good. And in another version says, willing to yield to others, full of mercy and good fruits, without partiality, without hypocrisy. Now the fruit of righteousness is sown in peace by those who make peace. This right here probably sounds like a death sentence to most Black men, to most people, right? Many people would say, what? You say for me to be wise, I have to always be gentle. I have to always be willing to yield to others. What about when they're not willing to yield to me? What about when they're trying to take something from me? I'll use my street wisdom then. I'll use my common sense then. But this right here is like, how does your wisdom match up with that? Because if it doesn't match up with that, because the context is, this is the wisdom, this is the definition of the wisdom from above. This is godly wisdom. And the truth of the matter is, sometimes it's hard for us to practice godly wisdom in a world that doesn't acknowledge it. And it says that you better protect your chest. You better protect your neck. Right? Or I'm gonna come at. Right? So it's like, what do I do with this? And it's that knowing that you're safe piece, Eric, that you're saying, and knowing that God's got you. And that's one of the main things that I find, the core pieces of understanding your sonship or your daughtership and what that looks like. And it doesn't always include bad stuff not happening to you. It just knowing where you stand and where you are. I don't want to keep on going in all these places, but if that scripture was to also answer the question of how can we get to this place of loving one another despite our differences, not even despite our differences, while we have them, holding them and living in them. How can we do that? And that definition of wisdom is one way, actually. Yielding to another doesn't mean I give over myself. It means that when we're talking about something, I don't need to be right now. I don't need to hold my rightness and my understanding of being right. But how pure? And it says in another part of the word in the book of Titus, it says, to the pure, all things are pure. But how many of us are pure? How many of us can really say, you know what, I'm coming into this environment with an open heart, one that won't look at you as other, that won't look at you as somebody that will hurt me. It's hard for me to do that because I can't bring that childlikeness into this space because you took the innocence from my childhood. And it seems like that childlike nature is unsafe for me. Right. And it's a restoration of that. That's the process that we can go to kind of bring this back full circle, to bring heaven on earth, right? To walk in self-care, to be able to say, yo, I got all of this work to do, this organization, my children, my significant other, my all of these things, and I'm about to go take a hike. Yep. I'm about to go on this walk. And I'm allow this childlike nature to come up, where I can look and see the beauty all around me, where I can rest. Y'all, if y'all ever see me walking in the woods, you might laugh because I be skipping, I be spinning, I'm turning around. I just go and I enjoy it. I'm looking at birds like I never see a bird before in my life. You know, I'm like, oh, I want to walk on the rocks and look at the water. And it's because I gotta play. We gotta play. We need play.
You know, Tyrice, I was on a
So
walk one day and saw a bluebird, and I've never really paid attention that was there. One thing that I want to say, in addition to you talking about like the childlike stuff, with therapy, childhood often comes up because you start realizing like a lot of the roots of identity, which you were also going into when you were talking about sonship and daughtership. The struggle with identity will cause you to not feel safe, right? So if you don't feel safe, you don't feel protected, and if you feel like you're just a child out here with
yeah.
no adult, there's an adult within us, right? We're all grown. But if you don't feel protected because you're still processing life through the eyes of an abandoned, neglected, or abused child, you can feel
Yes,
unsafe in this world. And
fully.
therapy has helped me with is realizing that, you ever see like a parent who has like the baby with the harness on the front, like they carrying their baby across their front? I started realizing that for a long time, I was trying to put the baby out of my life that was here, right? Not my own children, but the struggle of identity from my childhood, whether it be neglect, whatever it might have been. A girl not liking me when I was in second grade. I bought her a pretzel, by the way. I
That's a
often come
lot of
back to
money.
this story, bro. I bought this girl a cheese pretzel. That joint cost 30 cents back then. So I remember I liked her a lot too. But I realized like certain things that played out as rejection young often show up in adult relationship. And it was coming up in therapy, like, you know what? I keep trying to put this child to the side, but when I start realizing I have to carry this child with me while I'm adulting, while I'm out here being a responsible, while I'm actually being a father to my own children, I still carry parts of young Ihsan with me. And you carry parts of young Tyrice and young Eric. We all carry parts. And this goes out to everybody out there. You carry parts of you, and they're not to only just be put down. Of course, they're not allowed to always make the decision, but they're to be listened to, they're to be understood, they're to be cared for in a particular way, and realize like those are parts of our identity. What happened really did happen, whether it's an abundance of love and
Yes.
care or an abundance or a significant lack. If you got abused, that did happen, and you're still here, and you still have that story of resilience, of adversity, of being able to not manipulate, but being able to overcome adversity, struggle, all kinds of things. God is still good, but you are strong and you're here for a reason. And we're all here for a reason. And that baby we carry, you're the one who can care for it. God can show you how to care for it, and God cares for that. The same way that we're carrying that baby, God is carrying us, and that's what really started hitting me. And
I gotta share something.
Yes, sir.
And I don't mean to cut you off, but I needed
I'm done
because we were running long on time. Well, I didn't want to. I want to respect Tyrice's time and the time difference. But let me just say, the reality is that we are all children. We're all children. Like there's a myth, there's this myth that adulthood is a thing that we attain, right? No, it's just a happenstance of time, right? We're all old babies. And the reality is that what makes us different is whether or not we have learned those lessons that we needed to learn on the path as we age chronologically, right? And so some of those children, because when you just talked about this idea of a baby, and I think about how we often use that term, you know, in a derogatory sense when we're talking to other so-called adults, right? But what Tyrice just described with her in the woods, that childlike, right? The phrase childlike is a positive, but you a child is negative. How do we get into this, right? And it's the beliefs that we have associated with these labels. The reality is all we did was get old. Some people, you learn lessons along the way and you mature, you grow in understanding, whether it's intellectually or spiritually or emotionally, right? We're going to age chronologically. We're going to age chronologically. We have no choice in that. But whether or not we age in our emotional intelligence, our spiritual intelligence, our intellectual intelligence is really all up to us and how we interact with everyone else around us. And so I really wanted to stress that, because as someone who advocates for children and parents, it's important to understand that we encounter adults every day who are still stuck in some form or some part of their childhood because there's some unaddressed issue, right? And so it's really important to just sit in this concept for a while. One, it'll help you respect children a little bit differently. You get to look at these little human beings and recognize that they're on a path of development. And then you're able to start seeing yourself along that same path. It's not something where we made it, right? We're still all dealing with our childhood, whether or not we've been embraced and loved and we continue to walk in it, right? Or whether we were rejected and hurt and we're trying to get back to that sense of purity and that childlike state that Ty mentioned, right? So I just wanted to share that because I think it's just so, we get caught up in these labels and these concepts, and we often don't really appreciate what we're talking about. Like, I think I'm a firm believer that we put so many layers of oppression on children early on in life that it's all starts to reveal itself when we get to be an adult and we start interacting with one another, right? So we have to respect that childlike nature in our spirit and recognize that we have to grow emotionally, intellectually, and spiritually, because we're gonna grow chronologically, and we don't have no choice in that.
Eric, I want to say something in addition to what you just spoke on, because I saw something clear when you were talking about like we're all just old babies. If that's true, like, you know how you hear like people, you see somebody with like a Ferrari, like in the movies, they'll be like, this person is like overcompensating, right? If you're overcompensating for trauma in your life as an adult, it can be used in an abusive way. Where we, even like the police, I'm not saying every police officer was bullied as a child, but what if you were bullied as a child and you now have a badge and a gun, and you get to go around anybody who looks like who bullied you? You now you're a skinny white kid. Black men beat you up in school or whatever, or a big guy. Maybe it has nothing to do with race, but you were mistreated, overlooked, forgotten. and you now have authority when you walk in a room. When you drive behind a car, that car slows down. People start straightening up and hitting speed lights. I mean, hitting their brakes early, all kinds of things. That can play out in a way where your child, your inner child, is now being fed. Yes, we got them back. We finally won that fight that we lost 20 years ago. And then it shows up in the context of an abuse of power. That's just with a police officer.
I want to say,
Political figures.
There's a reason why
Preachers.
there's a saying that money and power only amplify, show more of who you already are.
Yes.
That's what that saying means. Money and power only amplify, make or show more of who you already are. So if you're a damaged child and you get power, you're going to be a powerful damaged child, right? And the same thing applies. Money is just a tool for that to influence power, right? Mm-hmm. And so the same thing applies. It's all about, are we walking around? We're all broken in some kind of way. Like nobody's perfect at all. We all got something. We got that. Just the fact that we all have an ego, that voice that talks to us, that's separate from who we are on a spiritual level. That in and of itself is a conflict. If you could deal with that, you're already ahead of the game. So the fact that there's so many people who are walking around with unaddressed trauma from childhood or even teenage years. I know a lot of people, the teenage years are really rough. And I've seen it in my own children, how they are beautiful up until they get to that age and they come into conflict and with society and other teens and expectations and that drive to be that adult thing. Again, that label that we keep putting this label on what being an adult. Suddenly when you turn 18, people ask you feel any different? Did you feel any different when you turned 18? Most of them are likely not. You was probably happy and that was it. Did you feel any different when you turned 21 than when you was 20? Most people not, right? So the reality is that there's this arbitrary label, this concept that we're putting on this time. And we got to keep going back to address those, again, I keep talking about the layers that we put on children. So I didn't mean to cut you off, but yes, the abuse of power, trauma connected with power is one of the biggest causes of sorrow and abuse and oppression in the world today. I'll tell you one thing, and this, I'm gonna shut up. And it's important because this person that we just had as president of the United States, I often tell people that, I think it was Frontline, did a special where they looked at his life. They actually compared him and Hillary Clinton side by side, their life, their upbringings. Mm-hmm. If you looked at his life, he has an older brother. He had an older brother. I don't know if he's still alive, but he had an older brother. And his older brother was a very different personality. And that older brother was regularly ridiculed and abused and talked down to by his father. And so this person that used to be our president watched that dynamic play out and saw his father and emulated his father's treatment of his own brother. Wow. To the point where it manifested in his treatment of everyone else around him. So when you were to talk about the power of like why we need to examine our childhoods, we just got through 4 years of somebody that needed to examine their childhood, right? So this is a perfect example of how powerful, how deeply ingrained and enrooted some of these things that happen in our childhood play out in our all the way until oftentimes the day that we die.
That's an incredible story. I never knew that.
It's sad. It's sad. It's sad, but it's true. And I think it's a cautionary tale for us all to look at ourselves and children a little bit differently.
I think his brother died shortly after he no, I don't know if it was after the election, but his brother died within like the last year. I remember that being a story. Mm-hmm. Speaking of death, we do need to wrap up, but I wanted to acknowledge two things. We're about a year removed from one of the shows we had when we did a show about veterans. And one of the guests on that show, Sean Wilson, he passed away within like the last month or so. And I just want to acknowledge that Sean is no longer with us. He was a great man. He's someone who did a lot of work within the area of suicide prevention and trying to really help veterans find resources. And he also did some law enforcement work in his life. So he was just a really good guy. And for the Wilson family and whoever else may be within relation to Sean, our condolences. Also, this is the 2-year anniversary, or 2 years to the date of the week that to the week of the date that Philip Spruwell died. And Philip Spruwell was an 11-year-old 4th grade student at Comegys who took his life. And that's actually the way Eric and I connected in the aftermath of his death. Our condolences continue to go out, and our thoughts to his family and the communities impacted by his death, whether that be Comegys or the Bartram Village area, Bartram Gardens, and just Southwest Philadelphia as a whole. The families out there who were impacted by any level of loss and grief during this time, our thoughts are with you all. I also want to acknowledge that the resources that are available to the community through the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention are still at the ready. I serve on the board for AFSP Philly, on the committee for diversity, equity, and inclusion. I'm a co-chair with Tia Jones, and we have resources that are available in forms of training, Talk Saves Lives, More Than Sad, just different trainings that are out there to tell people about what suicide looks like, what warning signs are out there. There's a lot of information available on afsp.org. Just go there. If you want to register for any of the seminars, the webinars, whatever, they're free. These resources are available. Sign up for the walks. You can always walk to fight suicide. There's campus walks. There's a walk every year in October at the Art Museum. There's resources here. And we didn't get really into all the MBKCares resources, but just know we have a lot more than just this. This is not just, let me not say just. We have more beyond this that we want to bring to the community. We have programs that are going to be impactful. We're going to need your prayers, your support, and even your manpower. So if there's anyone out there who would like to volunteer, please inbox us. We need you, particularly if there's any brothers out there. You could really use your help, your guidance, trying to mentor and bring down these murder rates, and also just the lack of guidance that's going on within our communities. We need somebody else out there like Eric to speak truth to other Black men, to help them along the way, to help them realize the identity they already carry that's growing into an old baby. Old baby. That's the quote of the year, bro.
Yeah, I'm gonna get a t-shirt, man.
Ty, did you want to say anything as we close out?
Actually, I just say thank you for allowing me in this space and for having me in this space. What I do want to say is, hey family, if you want to get in contact with me, you can reach me on my website is www.generateabundance.com. Eric spoke about abundance earlier. I was thinking, I got my Generate Abundance shirt on today. Ihsan was like repping his tee. I'm gonna rep my tee. That's my Generate Abundance logo tee. I got my joint on. Also just hit me up on my email, Tyrice McCoy, to my name @gmail.com. It has been a pleasure it's always a pleasure to be on here with you all. I love talking to y'all. Y'all understand.
I love talking to you. Tyrice, can I ask you a question before you go? That shirt, is that available for purchase on your website?
Not currently.
Okay.
If a person wants a shirt, this is my logo. So I don't know if it's a way I can show it to you guys, but it's a logo. It's my logo, and it's a pomegranate.
Okay.
And it's a whole pomegranate, and then it's an open pomegranate. I got to share. The pomegranate represents abundance. And oftentimes when we see them in the stores, they're all like ashy, not super red. They got a whole bunch of bruises and scars on them and whatnot. And so it doesn't look on the outside like what's on the inside. And one of the most healthy juices full of antioxidants is pomegranate juice. We only get that in the crushing, or it's when you open up the pomegranate, can you see what the full abundance that's inside of it. So that's where my logo comes from.
Okay.
Beautiful.
If that shirt becomes available, just let me know. I wanted to gift that to somebody in our studio audience. Not studio audience. Look at me. Hold on.
You've been watching too much TV.
I always wanted to say that, didn't you?
Yeah, that's a
In our studio
generational
audience, he's
thing.
ready. Look, that's prophetic. Like, that's just what we look forward to.
No, that was watching too much Price is Right. Where they be
Price
like,
is Right. I was going to say that.
all right, so I wanted to
Come on down. Come on down.
Anybody out there who wanted a shirt, I wanted to gift it to them. Last week we had the pleasure of speaking with Greg Corbin, and we offered his book, Breathing Ashes, to the public. So I wanted to offer any resources you have as well. So when that becomes available, just let me know, because I would like to gift that to somebody out here beyond just what you've already gifted. You're such a joy. You're not the only one who enjoys speaking and listening to you too, like speaking to you, speaking with you. And the same with Eric. Eric, you're that dude, man. And I really just appreciate you all. We didn't get into a lot of things, but I think we got into everything that was supposed to happen and be discussed. In the sake of time, well, in respect to the sake of time, not only to us, but to our studio audience out there, I want to make sure that we let you all go, continue to have a peaceful night. There's some key points that I want to reiterate. Please tap into the resources of therapy if it's available. I'm also a firm believer that if medicine is necessary, if it's necessary, take advantage of it. It worked for me.
But don't self-medicate.
Absolutely. Go for walks. Journaling is a really decent resource. It helps with communication with self. It actually opens up doors to communicate better with God and with your therapist in addition to that. And then rest, get some rest, eat a good meal. With that said, thank you for tuning in to this episode number 2, season 3 of Wellness Wednesday. We'll be back again next Wednesday, April the 21st. I don't know who our guests will be yet, but I know that you'll be here to join in the conversation with us as our studio audience, our listening base. Please follow us on YouTube at MBKCares, subscribe to the channel. Continue to support us by sharing these messages with other people, and hopefully you're paying attention to the child that you carry with you. We appreciate you. Eric, thank you. Tyrice, thank you. You all have a peaceful night, and God bless you, everyone.
Thank you.